Games. My name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin.
And we are the Dungeon Dudes. Welcome to our channel where we cover everything Dungeons & Dragons, including advice for players and guides for Dungeon Masters.
We upload new videos on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode.
So, a couple months ago, the fine folks at Anycubic, who make 3D printers, reached out to us and asked us if we wanted to try out the Anycubic Photon Zero. We did and started to cut our teeth a little bit on trying out 3D printing. And just recently as well, they sent us another 3D printer to try out, the Anycubic Photon Mono. So we thought we'd put this video together today to talk about our experiences with a little bit more feedback for 3D printing, because after that first video, many of our viewers gave us some great advice and feedback on how we could get better at it. And I've been doing a lot of 3D printing lately, and I'm super excited about it.
This is a little bit more off-the-cuff video, so Monty and I are just going to kind of be having a conversation about what we found in the last few months. Now, Monty's been doing most of the 3D printing, but I can tell you from a bystander standing by and watching him do this, that after we filmed that first video where we were like, is it really cost-effective? Is it really worth it? The 3D printers are kind of expensive, and then you have to paint all the minis. From then till now, I have seen a change in Monty. And I'm going to tell you right now that he will message me every day with just, look what I 3D printed. Look at all these things I 3D printed. Look how many more things I 3D printed. Do you want some trolls? I printed you some trolls. So we have been getting into it. And even as somebody who's been watching, I've been really impressed with the output of 3D printing and the excitement that even I've started to have. I've started scouring 3D printing recipes, looking for awesome things to use that I can send to Monty and be like, yo, can I get a few of these? Because they'd be amazing at my table.
So, full disclosure, Anycubic did send us the Photon Mono and a couple of liters of their gray resin so that we could try it out for the purposes of making this review. And we have purchased some STL files and 3D models from a variety of manufacturers as well and sculptors. So we've tried these out as well for the purposes of making this review. I have to say, for my purposes, I am totally on board with all this. The Photon Zero was really awesome, but the Photon Mono kind of blows it out of the water.
Monty printed me out the same mini with both printers. He printed one out with the original printer, which he gave to me, and I said, oh yeah, this is really cool. And then about 2 weeks later, he said, no, I printed you out a better one. And the difference is incredible, and actually the quality of the minis that this printer is producing stand up to some of the best minis that I have seen on the market. The detail is incredible, and also the ease of creating terrain is another thing that I've been really excited about. All of this kind of combined has opened up what 3D printing means in my eyes as well, as I moved from it's something I will never really get into to how many 3D printers can I have going at once.
So a little bit of the technical details. The Anycubic Photon Mono is a slightly new design of the very well-received Anycubic Photon. Instead of using a tricolor LCD screen, the Photon Mono uses a monocolored screen. So this actually means that it cures the resin faster, up to 2 or 3 times faster. So one of the things that I was really, really impressed with, and one of the things that I've noticed so much more that's contributed actually to the increased volume of miniatures that are now spreading across my game room, is that this thing prints the models that would have taken 6-7 hours in 3 to 4 hours. Models like this amazing Phoenix bird by Artisan Guild, which is a multi-part model with these giant wings that would have taken me like a week to print out with the Zero and actually not been possible because it was too big. I was able to print it out in a single day. And so now I have this giant Phoenix, and I'm working on printing out a dragon and a few other really big models. And the extra size over the Zero that I get with the Mono, and the fact that it prints these so much faster. So I printed out these orcs, and I was actually able to print 6 of them at a time. And so what ended up happening is that in an afternoon, because it takes the printer the same amount of time to print 1 orc as it does to do 6. So I loaded up the build plate and did 6, and then I did another 6. I was like, I want more orcs.
And I think that is actually one of the major benefits of 3D printing. Is one thing that I found with my method, which was always buying pre-painted minis, is it was sometimes hard to get a large collection of the minis that you need a bunch of. You might need a bunch of orcs, you might need a bunch of undead, you might need a bunch of bandits or cultists. And when you're buying boxes and things like that, it can be a little hard to bank on getting a number of those same minis. But with 3D printing, not only do you get a variety of different options, but you can print out as many as you want. I can tell you now that Monty and I are much more sold on 3D printing as a way of producing minis. But you still do need the space to do it. You need to have somewhere that you can set up a 3D printer, and there is a lot of things to take into account with the toxicity of the resin and the way that you're going to ventilate the room that you're in. So you need a good space to 3D print. And you do still have to paint the minis yourself. Now, for the benefit of Monty and I, we have both really got into model painting in the last couple of years as well. So this is something that has taken off for us as well. So we're happy to paint our own minis. If you're not into painting minis and you don't have the space, then 3D printing is still maybe not the most viable option. But if you were on the fence about whether or not you were going to jump into 3D printing, I think we are both now on the side of saying it's worth it and it's great. But maybe you can give us some insights into the cost effectiveness, because in the previous video, we said that it wasn't very cost effective because you still had to paint them, you had to buy paints, you had to get into this hobby, the time consuming elements of 3D printing were all a factor. But now that you've been doing it for a few months, and obviously I'm pretty sure your floor is just made of 3D printed minis now. You can't see it, but if we step out of these chairs, we're just going to be crushing millions and millions of minis that Monty has printed. What are your thoughts now on the cost effectiveness?
The first cost is that you need the 3D printer itself. So in the case of the Anycubic Photon Mono, I actually don't have the final pricing from Anycubic yet because it is just coming out. We got a pre-release version of the Mono. But from what I understand, the printer is going to be in the $300 to $400 price point, which is a really good price. I have to say the Photon Mono has been really nice to me. One of the things you have to do with the 3D printer is level it. I leveled it once and haven't had to do it since. And in all of the prints that I've done over the past 3 weeks, I have had 2 failed prints. And one of them was because I messed the supports up, right? So that it has just been rock solid, super consistent, and super, super fast about doing it. But there is the upfront cost of buying the printer itself. The next thing is buying the resin. So I've been using Anycubic's standard gray resin that they sent me. And I have now gone through 3 liters of resin, and it's about $50 Canadian per liter. A miniature of this size and quality from any other manufacturer would cost you $10 to $20 alone for this figure. In fact, I have figures that are similar to this by other major miniature manufacturer companies, where you would get 3 of these trolls in a box set for close to $70 Canadian. And I printed out 6 of these guys and 2 dozen orcs and about 20 other miniatures on a single bottle of resin. So the comparison in terms of the cost, once you add the resin and once you add the 3D printer compared to unpainted miniatures, I think that you actually kind of hit this tipping point where eventually you've paid for the cost of the printer and you paid for the cost of the miniatures, and then you're kind of in actually this mode where now you have to paint a ton of minis.
And that is the one thing that I think you do need to keep in account is if you're not a hobbyist, if you're only maybe a light painter, you might end up producing a lot more minis. Even Monty, who paints a lot, is producing more minis than he can paint. It's probably going to be 3 to 4 years before I see half of these guys painted.
Yeah. Oh yeah. These guys are going to be bare gray resin for a very long time. On that front, though, as well, with the resin printers like the Photon Mono, you get an exceptional quality in the prints. So because one of the big advantages of the Photon Mono is that because it prints faster, you can print more layers, which means that you can print something more detailed. Whereas FDM printers or even other resin printers, you want to have much thicker layers. That means that they're not as detailed. The other thing is that you have to clean the models afterwards. So you have to bathe them in isopropyl alcohol and then cure them with UV light. Now, fortunately, Anycubic sent to us their wash and cure station, which makes that a super painless process. Like, it is idiot-proof. As long as you wear gloves, goggles, and a mask, you're going to be fine. They clean up real perfectly. So I really recommend both the wash and cure station and the Mono I think for anyone considering going into 3D printing that has never done it before, you get yourself a Photon Mono and a wash and cure station, and you are off to the races.
There's one other cost that you need to factor in when you're looking at 3D printers as well, and that's if you want really high quality minis. Ours are from Artisan Guild. None of these were free. We did have to pay to obtain the printable schematics for these minis. So you are looking at, you want to be able to paint. That's going to be a hobby that you're going to invest time into. You want to have a space to 3D print. You're going to have to buy the printer up front, and then you're going to want to pay for some of the premium models that you can actually print with your 3D printer.
Now, there's a lot of great free options out there for miniatures. There's some prolific designers that have done the entire monster manual. One of the issues, though, is that resin miniatures have to be properly supported so they come off the printer correctly. And I'm going to be perfectly honest. I don't have the time, nor the interest, nor the motivation to learn how to support resin miniatures. I would rather pay someone else to do that for me. So for all of you out there that are sculptors that are making 3D prints, you will get more money from me if you pre-support your prints. It's worthwhile. It's real, like, from the beginners that are entering this, it is the big difference in the world. And for me, I could spend an hour supporting this miniature, or I could spend an hour painting it. And my hobby time is valuable, so I really like the pre-supported ones, and I'm willing to pay the price for those. If you want to make it a whole hobby, you don't have to, though. You can support them yourself.
So that has been our look at 3D printing with the Anycubic Photon Mono 3D printer. If you have any 3D printing advice for us, or you have some favorite models that you have obtained, you can tell us about them in the comments below. We'll also in the description of this video include links to the Anycubic Photon Mono printer and the cure and wash station as well for anybody interested in getting into this amazing hobby.
It is a hobby. So remember what you are signing up for. But as someone that's loved using miniatures in my Dungeons & Dragons game, I think that this is utterly transformative. And the impact that this is going to have of 3D printing on the hobby, how easy resin 3D printing has become, and the quality of the miniatures has blown my mind. We've also tossed in a few links below to the stores for the various manufacturers that we've tried out ourselves so far. There's lots of great miniature creators right now in the 3D printing space, so we would love to hear your recommendations for other folks that we should check out as well. And maybe we'll paint some of these up and showcase them once I actually get around to painting a fraction of all the minis that I've printed so far.
So a special thank you to Anycubic for sending us the printer and the cure and wash station, giving us the opportunity to really dig into this hobby and try it out. And for all of you watching out there, if you are interested in 3D printing, we hope that this video gives you at least a starting point, and hopefully we can look even further into this hobby in the future.
Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time
In the dungeon.